Hello and welcome to Stretford Paddock. It is Tuesday the 28th of March and we are here live with the news, looking at the latest revelations in Marcus Rashford's contract situation. Manchester United are on, I wouldn't say on the brink, but we've got the ball rolling with Marcus Rashford. A big article out of The Athletic this morning, which we'll be going through, discussing the latest with Marcus Rashford. Talk of a £400,000 per week bid for him last season from PSG, what that means for Manchester United, where this deal is currently set up at, and exactly how this is going to unfold for Rashford and for Manchester United. Get your thoughts in the comments, get your likes on the video. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. You can see right there in the middle of the screen there. And let's get into it. First of all, Danny Inns, morning, Joe. Santa Notch says, Buongiorno, Giuseppe. I guess that means hello, Joe. Sif. And Navoma says, morning, Joe. Good morning, everyone. Get your thoughts in. We've also got updates on Harry Kane. We're looking at Victor Osimhen, a slight twist in the tail there, with potential for Chelsea to come in for the striker. And we'll also be looking a little bit at some other Marcus Rashford situations. He's back in training and other things like that. But let's start off. Manchester United have announced the official date for the first, not the first game, but the first announced game of their pre-season tour. This one is at the Snapdragon Stadium, which, is there a cooler and simultaneously least cool name in all of sports than the Snapdragon Stadium? It couldn't be more cool, but it also couldn't be sadder, really, could it? If you have to call it the Snapdragon Stadium, you're probably not very menacing yourself. Just call it the Fudge Stadium. Because that way, like, who's playing the Fudge Stadium? You're like, have you seen them? They are massive, and they will batter you. But whereas Snapdragon, it's a bit... Do you know what I mean? You put in all your chips at the front there, like, oh, look at us, Snapdragon. Anyway, don't worry about that. We're playing Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney's Wrexham at the Snapdragon Stadium in San Diego on July 25th, the day after my 30th birthday, let it be known. I'll be there, hopefully. And if not, I'll just be probably in a ditch somewhere, hungover. But this is the first game that has been announced. I think there is supposedly going to be another game before this. The tour starts on the 22nd, so I would assume there's going to be another game before that. Rumours of, well, not rumours, I think. We've seen journalists reporting that the tour will be starting in New York, so presumably there will be a game there before United move to San Diego, but this is the first one. They also released a video with it, which I think is quite, I wouldn't say sweet, but quite nice. You see the two owners of Wrexham there, who presumably have played absolutely no part in getting this game put together. They ring up Sir Alex Ferguson, talking about how great he is with mind games, how menacing he is. And he basically just stares them down until they leave the call, and then they realise that he was on mute the whole time. So, yeah, it's quite a little bit of fun. Basically, United are playing Wrexham on the 25th of July. Doesn't mean much more than that, I don't think. But there was a rumour as well, or a report, should I say, that United will play a youth-focused team for that game. Because obviously I think Wrexham are, National League? So yeah, it's not going to be one for Casemiro's and Rashford's. It's probably going to be a bit more, Charlie Savage and Zidane Iqbal, which obviously is good to see as well. Let's move on then. There's only so much we can say about a game that is going to be happening in 4 months' time. Osimhen. United obviously linked with him. He seems to be currently a kind of, I won't say two-horse race because that's, that we can't sign both of them, but Kane and Osimhen seem to be the two main targets for Manchester United this summer. And this, according to Football Insider, is that Chelsea are readying a £100 million Victor Osimhen bid as the Champions League plan is revealed. Chelsea prepared to bid £100 million for their top priority target, Victor Osimhen. Sources have told Football Insider. Is it just me, or is that almost embarrassing by Chelsea there? If you're willing to pay £106 million for a central midfielder in Fernandes that had literally played 17 league games in Europe in his whole life, and you're not willing to pay more than that for a striker that is the top scorer, I think, in Serie A, certainly the top scorer for Napoli, who are about to win the Serie A by an absolute mile. He's got more goals this season than Enzo Fernandez had played games in Europe before signing him, and you're paying less for him. You know what I mean? I know 100 million is a lot of money, but Chelsea have done this to themselves. You can't blame anyone but yourself, Chelsea. If you think Enzo Fernandez is worth 105 million, you must now pay 200 million for Osimhen. Because otherwise, what even is money? You're just taking the piss, aren't you? If you went into a shop, there is no way the credentials, the track record, the history of these two players would mean that the price tag on Osimhen was smaller than the price tag on Fernandes. So you got to pay more than that. Whereas United, do you know what I mean? We only paid 45 million for Bruno Fernandes, and this was a guy that had scored 30 goals from midfield the season before. So actually, we should probably get Osimhen for about 28 million. Do you know what I mean? These are the maths that I like to do in my head. But basically, the story here is that United are going to have to battle Chelsea for Osimhen if we want him, which does make some sense. They're desperate for a striker. They've got currently sort of Kai Havertz putting in 1 goal every 4 games, and everyone else not scoring at all. And they need a striker, and obviously so do United. I think are the only fit striker that United have got is Weghorst, who I think has got 2 goals in 19 games for United this season. So we're both desperate for a striker. Chelsea, obviously, willing to splash the cash, probably put him on a sort of 20 or 30 year contract, make him the new Stanley Matthews, and play him every week for that time. But yeah, United are going to have to battle someone for Victor Osimhen, probably Chelsea. Santanoch says, didn't Napoli value him at 150 million euros? They say this, but surely not. Do you know what I mean? Like, no offence to him, but he's had 1 good season. He's had a couple of alright seasons, and then he's had this one where he's sort of exploded onto the scene. You can't tell me that he's worth 150 million quid. That is what I think. That's what PSG paid for Mbappe, isn't it? 150 million. And he was in the same league. He was a much younger player. I think he was 19 or 18 when they bought him. He was, on course to be the best player in the world, not just the best striker in Serie A. It would be bizarre to me if anyone paid 150 million for him. But like you said, if that's what Napoli are pricing him at, maybe no one will buy him this summer. Matt Wick says, surely that fee for him can't be accurate. Serie A team paid 80 million for potential 3 years ago. It worked out, but seems totally unlikely. Do you mean that in that case, it should be more than that? They paid 80 million for potential, but I think it was 60 rising up to 80. And I don't know if those stipulations have been sort of achieved. But also, would you say that he's added much value to that? They bought a 21-year-old thinking he was going to be one of the best strikers in the world, and 3 years later he's having his first big season. I don't know if he is worth much more than he was worth then, if you know what I mean. Maybe a bit more, because obviously now he's kind of doing it, but he's not like he went there and, like I said, gone full Mbappe, who's I think got 150 career goals already and he's 22. I don't know how much money he would have added to that. Joe, does he want to come to United? I asked him, but he hasn't replied, unfortunately. But I think if the right money comes in and if the project seems good, you would assume so, wouldn't you? Let's move on then. Other transfer target, of course, for Man United is Harry Kane. And the latest here from bet maker Betfair is that Harry Kane is most likely to join Manchester United if he leaves Tottenham this summer. 15-8, which is still basically 2-1 in it. And then everyone else is wild outsiders. The weird thing there is no other team other than Newcastle in the Premier League. And he's spoken so many times about wanting to break Shearer's record. I don't know why Chelsea wouldn't be higher up on that list, personally, because, they need a striker and he wants to stay in England. I can't see him moving to Bayern Munich. And what's he on, 200 Premier League goals? 203 Premier League goals? He's not going to leave now. He wants to go for Shearer's record. So, yeah, I don't see why Bayern Munich and PSG and Barca and Real Madrid would be that high on the list, higher than the likes of Chelsea or even City, who I know they got Haaland, but he could leave at any moment to Real Madrid, couldn't he? But yeah, United currently favourites to sign Harry Kane, assuming that he does leave Tottenham. Jake Harvey says, Kane seems more of a Ten Hag signing, more involved in the build-up of play and a proven target man. Yeah, I would prefer Kane. I've spoken about that quite at length on this channel. If you want to check that out, me and Jay did a debate last week talking about Kane versus Osimhen. Jay wants Osimhen, I want Kane. Make sure you go and check that out. Brian Casey says, I'd like to see Kane at United, but not for 100 million. If we got him for 50 million, then absolutely. We're not going to get him for 50 million. Unfortunately, there is absolutely no chance we get him for 50 million. Ken Key Buckley says, why would we give Daniel Levy money? Get him for free. Well, he's not free, is he? They won't let him leave for free. I know he's only got 1 year left on his contract, but Hazard went to Real Madrid from Chelsea for 115 million euros, 100 million quid, when he had 1 year left on his contract. So, you're not getting Harry Kane for free for another year. By that time, Casemiro's 32, Varane's 30. We've got a lot of players in that team who could. Eriksen will be 32. We could do with winning trophies next season and really challenging next season. So I don't think there's a case where we wait and we, get it for free. Santa Notch says, no chance when dealing with Daniel Levy. It's weird that though, isn't it? Because Napoli are also arguably the most difficult team in Europe to negotiate with. Napoli wanted 120 million euros for Koulibaly when he was 29. A centre-back that had won nothing his entire career. I know, obviously it's not necessarily his fault, but hadn't, particularly impressed at international level either, and was, one of the better centre-backs in Serie A. They wanted 120 million euros for him. This was a few years ago, obviously, before he went to Chelsea. Napoli are notoriously difficult to buy players from. And, I know Daniel Levy's difficult as well, but I don't think Napoli are much better, much easier. I'm not sure. Key Buckley says, Hazard is a good example. Waste money then. I guess you mean because Hazard's bad for Real Madrid, Kane would be bad for United, which, I don't think that's true. Jake Harvey says, what about Kim Min-jae and his muscular chest? Yeah, that is a possibility as well, someone that's been mentioned. Another one that, I was talking about this the other day with Ronaldo, but these teams come about, don't they, where they're sort of somewhat a surprise package. I know that Napoli are obviously a good team, but they've not won their league since Maradona was there. And they sort of pop up where you saw Jose's Porto do it, where I know they've won their league a lot, but then they went on to win the Champions League. You saw Ajax do it in 2019, wasn't it? That team where, you saw a lot of those players leave. De Jong and Van der Beek left there, and a few others left there as well after their success in the Champions League. You saw Monaco do it in 2016, 2017, 2018. And you saw a lot of the players from there, like Fabinho went to Liverpool, and Mbappe obviously went to PSG. Loads of players from that. Bernardo Silva went to Man City. Loads of players from that team, where these teams sort of pop up, where no one really expects a lot of them. A lot of players you've not heard of. Dortmund was another one in, I think, 2012 or whenever it was, the last time they won the league. And then they get absolutely ripped to shreds by the big boys in Europe. And most of the time, these players that look fantastic for those teams, Leicester is another one in 2016, there is 2 or 3 players in those teams that are the absolute gems, that are the ones worth buying, the ones worth sneaking and sort of poaching for big money. Mahrez to City, for example. But for every Mahrez to City, there is a Danny Drinkwater to Chelsea. And a lot of these teams have successful players that look really good in this one sort of pinnacle moment season. They go anywhere else and they are shit. And you have to make sure that you're getting the right one. So, Kvaratskhelia for Napoli, he could be the real deal, but maybe not. Osimhen could be the real deal. Kim Min-jae could be the real deal. Zielinski in the middle could be the real deal. They've got all these players who everyone's obsessed with at the minute because they're winning so many games, but not all of them are world class. So you could easily come in and get the wrong one, get you the Danny Drinkwater, or imagine, I know he was obviously too old at the time, but imagine Wes Morgan for Leicester when they won the league. Imagine he was 27 when they won it, and the same quality, same talent. You're buying a 27-year-old Wes Morgan for 50 million quid. Oh shit, we've just bought a bang average Premier League centre-back because we thought he was great because he did this amazing thing with Leicester. It's almost like everyone at Napoli at the minute is the hottest property, but you might just get, like Liverpool did from Dortmund in whenever it was, you might just get a Nuri Sahin who comes over and is crap. You might get a Sal Niguez from Atletico Madrid who'd won the league a season or 2 before, goes to Chelsea on loan and cannot get a game for him. I think you've got to be very, very careful who you pick from these teams because, like I said, for every Fabinho and Bernardo Silva, there is a Sal Niguez, a Danny Drinkwater, and a Nuri Sahin who comes to another team, or Mario Götze is another one, comes to another team and actually was basically being carried by the team that they were at before. So we've got to be careful, I think, with sort of poaching everyone from Napoli just because they're having one good season. Anyway, that's my bit of a rant about that because it seems as though everyone's like, well, let's just buy everyone from Napoli, but not everyone in that team is world class. There's a few of them that are dragging, the rest of the team, which is obviously well oiled, well drilled, performing very well. But confidence and form are a big thing, and you've got to be able to sort of pick through that if you're a top scout and a top team. Right, let's move on to Marcus Rashford then. The big story today. Firstly, back in training. Luckily, He's just managed to be fit just in time for when we need him. England played on Sunday. He wasn't fit for that one. Monday, back in training. So, that's... And unfortunately, Gareth, them's the breaks. Do you know what I mean? He wasn't fit for England. Fair enough, because look, he's only come back in training on Monday, so he must have been injured Sunday. So he took part in light individual training session away from the main group. No ball work involved in his session, which purely focused on fitness. So again, he's obviously carrying a few knocks and he's taking his trip to New York, which I think was obviously good for him. Santanoc, just back to the Napoli thing. Did we do that with Van der Beek? Maybe, yeah. It looks a bit like it, doesn't it? He was obviously excellent for that Ten Hag side in the Champions League for Ajax that should have beaten Tottenham but beat Real Madrid, beat Juventus. Looked like he was going to be a sort of world beater, 21, 22 years old at the time. United signed him the season after and he's not really made it into the starting lineup ever since. So, yeah, you've got to look at who these players are. Rashford's back in training, good news. But the big story today, coming out of The Athletic, is Rashford's contract. Obviously, he's got 1 year left on his deal after this one. And this is coming out, obviously, a collaborative effort there from Critchley, Whitwell, Anchor, Crafton, yeah, the big boys. What we're hearing about Marcus Rashford's future at Manchester United. Contract talks have begun. Pace is picking up in the next few months. Well, it better do because he's only got a year left on his deal. Rashford's salary expectations are key, and sources say PSG offered wages of £400,000 plus last summer, which is amazing because that was coming off the back of his worst ever season for Manchester United. And obviously that hadn't hindered his reputation across Europe when you see that PSG, obviously one of the biggest teams, one of the richest teams in the world, were still willing to offer such a massive, massive fee for Marcus Rashford, or a massive sort of transfer fee, salary fee. Now, the details on this are basically United have had some talks with him already. United have discussed it, and maybe they've said, let's push this back to summer, let's go again then. They are ready and have scheduled in more talks. We've obviously got 1 year left on his deal after this one, which was a contract extension that happened in December. The club's choice, obviously, to do that. The weirdest thing is, though, if you're United and you renegotiated with him last summer, you probably could have gone to him and said, should we just put your wages up by 20k? Not had a great year, have you? 5 goals. That's not, we'll keep you around. Obviously, we love you, we support you, but let's sort of bump you up by a little bit of money, just matching inflation. Whereas now he's got 27 goals in 44 appearances, and he's reportedly on around £200,000 per week, which for most people, is a lot of money. But in the world of football, he is not one of Manchester United's top earners. There are a handful of players, such as, based on rumours and reports that you see, David De Gea, Casemiro, Rafael Varane, Jadon Sancho even, who's probably the best example because they play essentially the same position, who are all earning substantially more than Marcus Rashford. Obviously, Ronaldo was earning way more, but he's left now. If you're Marcus Rashford going into that negotiating room, and it's always been a suggestion and a rumour that homegrown players are massively underpaid at clubs, because there's always that implication and that sort of underlying feeling of, you don't want to leave, dear. You're not really going to leave. And you bring in these sort of exciting, players from other clubs or players from other countries who, theoretically are much more likely to leave because they are not fans of Manchester United, therefore they don't have the emotional tie, and you'll give them twice as much money. But really, is Marcus Rashford our most important player, or in the top 2 or 3 most important players at the club? For me, it's Casemiro, Rashford, and then maybe sort of Varane, Martinez, Bruno in that next category down from them. Like, if anyone's getting paid big money at Manchester United, it should be Marcus Rashford. Peter Griffith said Rashford's profile is too important to United. I agree. Liam Clark says, no offence, if Rashford is already on 200 grand a week, he should probably get the option to extend at that rate, or we should be willing to let him go. Our wages need to be brought back under control. The problem with that is that no one else is doing that. Erling Haaland is on, 400 grand a week at City, something ridiculous, 300 odd grand a week at City. Salah is on 300 plus at Arsenal, at Liverpool, sorry. Arsenal is slightly different because they don't really have any sort of huge names. They're a very young squad, so they've all got their next sort of big contract still to come. But Chelsea are offering mega money, PSG are offering mega money. You look at, the likes of Mbappe, who's the most important player for PSG. The rumours of what he's on, it's some of it you almost can't believe what the rumours are. 700 grand a week plus, the ability to make footballing decisions at the club. Like, Marcus Rashford is on nothing compared to these players. And you think what he is to us, he is the face of Manchester United. I know Casemiro on the pitch is obviously just as important as Rashford. But Rashford, globally, is the face of Manchester United. Now Cristiano Ronaldo is gone, he is the one that when people think of Man United, they think of Marcus Rashford. And to me, obviously, I think it would be good if we could bring everyone down a little bit. There was talk of Ten Hag wanting this kind of soft cap on wages, where no one is getting 400 or 500 grand like we saw Ronaldo get. But it's hard if you're Manchester United to say you don't deserve to be paid as much as Jadon Sancho. How can you say that to Rashford? How can you say that to him after what he's done for Man United over the last 5-6 years, and the goals he's scored, the numbers he's put up, how important he's been scoring in finals, or again this season? How can you tell him he's worth just under or just over half of what Sancho and De Gea are on? You can't really, can you? Maybe Abhinav Verma have a base fee and then a lot of bonuses. Maybe that's the way to go. Maybe we've been burned a little bit on some of these bigger fees. You look at some of the biggest money set transfers we've had in the last, or biggest salary transfers we've had over the last few years. You look at Sancho, you look at Alexis Sanchez, you look at Ronaldo, all of which were reported to be over 300 grand a week, and you wouldn't say any of them have probably deserved that kind of money so far. Obviously, Sancho, the jury's still out, but certainly Sanchez and Ronaldo, I don't think they earn their money. Maybe we have to go back to this of your base wage is 150 grand. If you score 5 goals, or if if you score 5 goals for the rest of the season, it's 200 grand. If you score a goal each game, it's, like these quite easy to achieve, but, still stipulated or stipulation-based, bonuses, that would make more sense to me. Because that way, if a player's bad, they're not earning 300 grand a week, which is obviously ridiculous. Right, that's going to be all from me. Hit the like button. Let's see if we can get the video to 500 likes. Hit that like button, hit subscribe. Let me know your thoughts on Marcus Rashford. Is it now time to give him that big contract? There was talk, obviously, in the Athletic article, which it doesn't take a genius to work out, but this is probably the most important contract of his career. He's 25 years old. This is the one that's going to be taking him into that sort of 30 age bracket. This is probably the biggest deal of his career, unless he moves club, obviously, in the next few years. But he needs to make this work for him. United have done somewhat of a job of kind of bringing down these wages. Talk of De Gea lowering his wages as well. That would leave only 2 or 3 players in that kind of stratospheric 300 grand plus kind of category. Maybe Marcus Rashford will be the last player to sign a contract of that size at Manchester United. But whatever it is, it seems as though the talks are progressing and things are moving forward with that. Thank you very much for joining me this morning. We'll be back later on today with a Uncensored. Me and Adam McCall are going to be going through and doing that podcast, so make sure you check that out today at 4 o'clock. And thank you very much for joining us. We'll see you in a bit.